And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello everyone, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. And this outlook will be for the end of the week, Thursday and Friday. And to set things up going into Thursday morning, we still have low pressure here over the northwestern portion of the Gulf and moisture being pulled back toward the north and west. We also have another low that's going to pivot up with moisture across Haida Gwaii and push that on up into the southern half of the Panhandle, especially by Thursday afternoon and for Thursday night, and then lingering across the region on Friday. Further west, we're going to have a compact area of low pressure come off the Asia mainland, and then once that gets going here out over the central Bering, it's going to draw down some colder air, and that cold air will take a plunge all the way across the Aleutians this weekend as a stronger, broader area of low pressure forms and actually pivots back across the Alaska Peninsula into the southeast Bering before heading back off toward the east into the North Pacific. So the weather pattern is going to stay active across especially southern areas of the state here as we go into the weekend. But Thursday morning, still IFR conditions along portions of the Brooks Range, upper Yukon Valley, and all along the Arctic coast. And we have pockets of IFR, eastern Norton Sound around Golovin, Shaktoolik, also west arm of the Alaska Range and along areas of Prince William Sound eastward toward Cordova. And then for Thursday afternoon, MVFR conditions common out over the Gulf up into the Copper River Basin along central and western Alaska Range into the southwest interior, going up the Yukon Valley, central Brooks Range with some IFR conditions along the northwest Chukchi Sea coast there between Utqiagvik and Cape Lisburne, and then way out toward the south and west we have IFR conditions generally along and south of the western Aleutians. For Friday morning, we find some IFR conditions here along the intercoastal mountains of the Panhandle, central southern areas from certainly Petersburg, Wrangell down toward Hyder, and then also up here in the central interior as we go up the Tanana River from the area in the central portion of the Yukon, and then also around Dead Horse east through Kaktovik, so Point Thompson, and then also IFR conditions, Utqiagvik down toward Point Lay and through the Bering Strait, and then here's kind of that hint of that compact low with IFR conditions, the snow showers around that heading southward. And the outlook for Friday afternoon, mainly MVFR conditions are expected along the Gulf Coast into the Panhandle and then continuing across areas of the interior up along the Alaska Range, up through the middle upper Yukon, Tanana Valleys, Brooks Range, and all along the Arctic coast. We do have this area of IFR conditions, snow showers with the colder air that's moving south-southeastward in the Bering from St. Matthew down through the Pribilovs. And that'll set the stage for that broader area of low pressure to develop over the weekend, as I was talking about earlier. But in the meantime, Anaktuvik Pass up there in the east central Brooks Range is looking to start IFR early Thursday, giving way to MVFR conditions. Same thing, Adigan, IFR becoming MVFR. West arm of the Alaska Range, Lake Clark, generally MVFR expected Thursday. Merrill Pass looking at IFR conditions early, giving way to MVFR conditions. Rainy Pass also IFR early, becoming MVFR. And right now, windy looks like it'll generally be MVFR throughout the day Thursday. As we go further east, Isabel Pass may actually even become VFR, especially by afternoon. And Mentasta Pass should be able to hold on to MVFR conditions Thursday. As you fly south of there through the Copper River Basin, though, you will tend to encounter MVFR conditions. Tanita Pass will be MVFR for the day Thursday, and so will Portage Pass. And finally, as we go farther east, Chilkoot and White starting out MVFR Thursday morning, giving way to VFR conditions. And looking at freezing levels at the surface, we have definitely cooler air in place over much of the mainland. And we find the freezing line coming up along the North Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula on up in through the Gulf Coast and then inner channels of the Panhandle. No real notable bump in freezing levels aloft for southeast, though freezing levels are around or just above 2,000 feet, especially south of Sitka through Prince of Wales Island. And then as we look off to the west, there is definitely a gradient of warmer air aloft, 2, 4, 6, 8,000 feet just south of the Aleutians. And that immediately will not have a significant impact, but it is a hint of that system, some energy coming up from the North Pacific that'll eventually form that low over this region early in the weekend. So for Thursday, we anticipate within showers, because we're going to have an area of precipitation come up over Haida Gwaii and pull back into the southern half of the Panhandle as we go through Thursday afternoon, Thursday night. Any of these clouds, we have showers, and it's kind of a convective nature. Those clouds build up with the daytime heating. So you get up above 4,000 feet, any of these rain snow showers, there could be some moderate icing with them, northeastern Gulf Coast into the central southern Panhandle. An area of isolated icing possible across the Alaska Range into the interior, and these areas could also see some snow showers develop, especially with the daytime heating. And then up here along the Arctic coast, especially say from around New Exit through Utqiagvik, there could be some icing in the clouds above 3,000 feet. And then the area out here over the Bering, especially from around St. Paul up to St. Matthew, there's a compact low with snow showers that are heading southeastward. That's what's going to draw down some colder air early in the weekend as we watch that other low develop where I just described. And then upper level features at 30,000 feet jet stream level, trough low pressure circulation here, Bering Strait. We have north-northwest winds coming across from the eastern Asian continent and then coming across the Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula with a localized wind max up around 100 knots. And then behind me here, we have southwesterly flow up into the Pacific Northwest coast of the lower 48. And then across much of Western Canada, we have a little bit of ridging and winds from the southwest as high as 100 knots or so there in north central Canada. Now bringing it down to 700 millibars or 9,000 feet, we find a belt of stronger winds, but well placed southeast of Alaska. You have to get back here to the west. We have generally this low circulation here, and then this one that's going to be right over the Bering Strait at 9,000 feet. And we have some winds coming up along the south slopes of the western half of the Brooks Range up to 30, 35 knots. And then the backside of this, we find winds out of the north coming down across eastern Russia and into the western Bering at 35 to 40 knots. And finally, at 3,000 feet, relatively quiet winds across the mainland and southeast. You have to get down toward Vancouver Island where winds could be upwards of 45 knots from the northwest, but out to the west. Here's this compact little low. Doesn't have really strong wind field with it near the surface. There is a pocket of circulation of maybe upwards of 30, 35 knots, but this feature will be absorbed as another low takes shape in this region as we go through Saturday. So that's going to increase the threat of gustier winds across the Aleutian chain with some snow showers, and then meanwhile another front will develop and pull moisture up along the Gulf and eventually into the Panhandle, especially through the latter half of the weekend and even into Monday. And looking at the threat of turbulence on Thursday, because we have these lingering waves of low pressure and boundaries that rotate through, we could see some moderate turbulence across a good portion of the Panhandle into the northern Gulf Coast, all the way outside of Yakutat Bay to Cape Suckling, surface to 6,000 feet, and also along areas northern Shelikof Strait and at the entrance of Cook Inlet. And then finally, way to the west, there may be some areas of moderate turbulence, especially there just west of Adak through about Shemya, surface to 3,000 feet.